Hello and welcome to Hair in the Hawthorn. I'm your host Kate Ray, and today we have no guest, it's just me. I wanted to take this opportunity to explain a little bit about myself and about why I put these videos together. I'm a paranormal investigator. It's something that I do part-time. I've been working for several years, and I'm part of the team, the Ghost Finder Paranormal Society. Within that team, we have the opportunity to not only do events with the public, but also to do private investigation. So as part of the work that I do, we've increasingly come across energies that are outside the realm of human spirit. And one thing that I did find very early on, when I went into properties and for the information that we were given about properties, that they weren't regular hauntings. They were displaying something very, very different. I'll just give you a little bit of background of where I'm at and how I work. So I'm not great with labels. I don't specifically like them for myself. I don't particularly call myself a psychic or a medium or a channeler. I do believe that we all have the opportunity to be able to tap into all kinds of different energies, and it's all about having a little bit of discipline, quite a lot of knowledge, and just keeping that going. And there are loads of different ways that you can do that, loads of different ways that you can tune into energies that are around you. And part of my role as part of the Ghost Finder Paranormal Society was to go into properties and to try and pick up and receive those energies within that property to add to the investigation, to find out what may be going on and how we can actually help the people involved in that. One thing that I found particularly was, as I was going into these properties, my ability to be able to tune into human disincarnate, so those who have passed over from human realm into spirit realm, became increasingly hard. What became increasingly easy for me to do was to step into those buildings and to start to tap into other energies. And these other energies have been given various different names. We'll talk about that a bit later, but a majority of them had been lumped into two categories, and those categories were of the angelic realm or the demonic realm. Now, the things that I was encountering didn't seem to fit the pattern of either of those realms particularly. So people were experiencing what they thought were malevolent or demonic characters. Actually, what they were experiencing was something else. And I think this is the point where I talk a little bit about my past. So fairyology and fairy faith and fairy folklore has always been something that's been with me, and it's always something that's been of a fascination to me. And I think the thing that for me as a child, what kind of veered me off the path of the normal fairy realms was the fact that I found it a little bit twee, and it didn't really sit right. I eventually, I think I was in my sort of early tweens, I think they're called now, sort of 11, 12 years old. I came across the artwork of Brian Froud, and for me that summarised, his artwork summarised what fae was. And fae isn't just fairy. And when I talk about fae, I talk about it in terms of a whole realm. It's not just a one being thing. So when you say fairies to people, people find it incredibly difficult because they have a very well-formed image of what fairies are, which are usually these sort of Disney Tinkerbelly type things. And that is one aspect of the fae realm. It certainly is. But it's not the only aspect. It's a very, very broad world, broad dimension. So when I discovered the artwork of Brian Froud, and I discovered that actually the things that I had been feeling and sensing and understanding that I couldn't find within children's literature or children's movies, suddenly became very apparent in his artwork. And it rekindled, I think, for me, the notions of fae and the notions of what that meant to me. And that really stayed with me, and it ebbed and flowed through my life as these things do. But it's always been there, that kind of love of fae. I then went on to find like-minded people and have attended quite a few fairy festivals. and had the opportunity to talk to some fantastic people, the crowds included in that. Lots of different artists and artisans who have had encounters, who are complete believers in the fairy realm, and it's something that's accumulated throughout my life as a rolling stone of interest. And it just so happened that this rolling stone then butted up with my interest in the paranormal, which I don't think's that an unusual thing for me. I'm definitely somebody who believes in cross-disciplinary ideas and pollination of ideas. So things, I don't discount cryptozoology, I don't discount alien and ufology. All these things for me intertwine. And finding that these things have connections and finding that there are very little barriers between things has actually opened up and broadened my scope within, I would say, run-of-the-mill ghost hunting. So I would go into these properties and I would do an opening. So I'd open myself up to the energies within these properties, and I would be pretty much instantly confronted, if you like, with beings that were not of a human nature. And they were visibly very different and energetically very different, and displaying very different traits to normal hauntings. And a lot of the time these have been put down to lesser demonics, and how they've been dealt with, if they had been dealt with before by others, wasn't particularly conducive to appeasing them or to easing the situation. So if you fast forward on a little bit, because Barry Guy, who is my team lead in Ghost Finder Paranormal Society, because he knew that I had a sort of a growing specialism in tapping into these energies, when he was filming for Help My House is Haunted, he asked me to see if I could tap into an energy that was occurring in a house in Devon. And I mean that episode went out, so it is out there. It's series 2, so people can view that and look at that. And what had confused, I think, the tenants of the property was they were having activity that wasn't particularly seen as in a normal haunting. And I picked up on a shape-shifting pixie type who was not very happy that one of its sacred trees had been cut down. And from that, because I'd obviously been in a public arena, and because people started knowing that this is where my research lies, I started to be approached by different people asking for advice and guidance when looking at the Fae. Now, I will talk in depth further down the line about the different assets and the different energies within the Fae realm, and I will go into depth with from my own experience and from my research as well. So people were asking basically the same questions, and I thought it was about time that we started as a paranormal community looking at these in depth and with a scope of people. So instead of me sitting here and doing this kind of thing one-to-one, and you know, listening to me sort of blithering on about my experiences and my research, I decided to introduce people from all different kinds of backgrounds to talk about their experiences, but particularly with a slant on how to live with the Fae, with fairy. Now, I say live with instead of banish or get rid of, because I think living alongside Fae is definitely something that is my first and foremost goal. I think that they have a purpose and have a job, and if they are making themselves known in a material realm, it is for good reason, and it's about trying to solve the puzzle of why they're there, and then how to move forward with them. So I approached different people, and I absolutely overjoyed that everybody that I have approached so far has been incredibly kind and said that they would love to participate in this. So I've started off by looking at the Fae from the angle of mediumship and channeling, and I spoke a little bit with David Wells about that, and also where they sit in terms of the Kabbalah, and how he works with them, and good ways in which we can communicate with them. And that's a really interesting video to look at where they fit in his spiritual ideals. And he does give some incredibly good tips on how to work with them. The second of the videos on this channel is with Julie Phelps, who's an experiencer, not just an experiencer of the Fae, but also an experiencer of alien interaction and Illuminati. And that particular video is a really good one to watch in terms of the cross-referencing and the crossovers and links between the points of the different disciplines. So she really does talk about connecting up between, ideas of fairies and ideas of Palladian, which again we'll be looking at in terms of how they connect up with angels and demons later on within videos that are coming up. And I'm going to do some videos around that as well, about my own belief of the kind of hierarchical system and the history and the ancient history of Fae and where I think they come from. Next, there's a video on here that's with Morgan Daimler, who is an American author, very well written and very well researched on the Celtic traditions, and she speaks very well about her historical knowledge. She's also got many personal experiences, but very specifically we talk about the ways in which to appease and befriend the Fae, and even to look at stages that you can go through if you have more malevolent energies that are coming into your existence, how you can work with them, and ultimately if they need banishing, what to do under that circumstances. So we've also got the lovely Ashley Mortimer, who is a Wiccan high priest, and he talks in terms of his experiences. Again, he talks about Kabbalah tree of life and where they fit, what he believes elementals and Faes are, and this again is another question that comes up a great deal when people talk to me about fairies, is what's the difference between Fae and elementals, and in that one we really get to the brass tacks of what that is. There is another video coming after this one, which will be next week, which is with a Turner Award winning artist and his particular experience of Pixie and how that influenced his life and influenced his artwork. So rolling on, I wanted this to have a breadth really of different people from different angles, so people can start picking up that the word fairy has connotations, and I want to blow those connotations out the water. I want to start looking at this in terms of real experiences and away from a Victorian notion. And again, I'll be doing a chat about the the difference between the Victorian notions and the actual factuals of fairy encounters. I'm hoping to get some fantastic guests on board for the month of August. Have a musician lined up. I have a few paranormal investigators lined up. So I'm really excited about doing that and giving breadth. I would say at this point, if anybody has any questions, then please drop them in the comment. I would love to see where people are at with this. I know that it's a bit of a toughie for people to swallow in the paranormal world, and I can completely and utterly sympathise with that. If you're a ghost hunter, saying that you are out there searching for fairies is perhaps not what a lot of people want to say. And I want to change that perception. I want to change the perception of there are other energies that interplay with us that do cause us mischief, let's say, at the very least, within our energetic field and within our lives. And we can go about investigating them in exactly the same ways that we do with other energies, with human energies and with human entities. However, the way that we deal with them can be very, very different. And we have to be mindful of this. We have to be mindful that the Fae work in a very different way, have very different agendas, and the difference is they're not there to be helped by us in the way that a lost spirit of a human being would be. So if we have hauntings of people who are trapped, who can't move on, how we work with them is very, very different to, say, if we have a house brownie or if we have an imp or a goblin. Now, imp's a really interesting term. It's a terminology that's being bantered around quite a lot within the paranormal community, and a lot of that has been about people trying to pin on an understanding of what fairies are, and especially when you get into the darker realms, the more malevolent or the more mischievous or the more angered energies of the Fae realm, the imp is a very good descriptive word. However, it's not always true. It's not always true that what you're dealing with is an imp. And again, the different ways that you deal with these different energies can be a make or break situation of whether you clear your own energy or your home away from that. Again, I'll be doing another video a bit later down the line on ways that we can work with the Fae. Not necessarily banish, not necessarily get rid. I don't think that that is, again, my goal, and I don't think that that is something that should be done in the first instance. If anybody's got any questions, again, like I say, pop them down in the comment. If you've had any experiences that you want to come on board and chat with me about, I'll be more than happy to do that. So anybody who's had modern encounters, who just want to sit down and have sort of 20 minutes, half an hour chat about what your encounter is, and how that's kind of manifested in your life and how it's affected you. I've often said in the interviews that I've had with different people, you can talk about seeing a ghost and people kind of raise a little bit of an eyebrow and go, oh, okay, tell me about it. You say that you've seen a UFO and people go, oh, okay, tell me about it. You say that you've seen a fairy and people go, ooh, and just kind of tend to steer clear of you like you're some kind of mad person. I want to tell you right now, let's blow this wide open. Let's get this subject on the radar and let's start talking about it. And I don't mean in the terms of, you know, unicorns and bubbles and all things love and light. Let's talk about it in terms of those different energies that are interplaying within our realm and their realm, and when they become a problem. And that's hopefully what these videos are about, and I'm trying to address. I've got it in the back of my mind all the time that I'm trying to address this with every interview that I do, that I'm kind of answering and preempting what people's questions are about the world of Fae. So please get in touch, and if anybody wants to have a chat, then I'm more than happy to do that. My name's Kate Ray. I am your host. This is Hair in the Hawthorn, and thank you very much for listening.